Hello and welcome to a brand new episode of the Data Science Daily Series. And today we will be talking about our discussion on the basic operations on data types. Specifically, we will be talking about strings and Boolean data types, which form two of the four basic data types in Python. Last session, we covered integers and floating point numbers. And we also talked about basic operations like variable assignment, printing, and so on, right? If you have not watched the session, make sure you are watching it to get a good introduction to the basic operations that are valid across different data types, right? Like variable assignment, converting data types from one type to another, and printing as well. If you're all set, let's get started as well. So today's goal is to go over the basic data types of strings and booleans, and towards the end we will have a short quiz where we will basically test your knowledge of these two sessions, right, covering the four main data types. So without further ado, let's get started. All right, so what are strings? Just a quick recap. Strings are just a sequence of characters. They should be surrounded by quotation marks, single or double, when getting defined, right? We can either use single or double. The key is to be consistent, right, with respect to the PEP 8 Python coding standards. So my str, I've defined a variable and I'm assigning in this value of hello. And this is my string. All right, let's look at how we can concatenate strings. So I'm creating another string, which is my underscore str underscore 2. And I am initializing this with the phrase, how are you, right? And you can see that there is a spacebar in the beginning. So that is also part of the string, right? The spacebar is counted as a character within the string. All right. So now what I can do is I can create a third string, my str3, which is basically my str plus my str2, right? And I'm concatenating these two strings. And if you see what my str3 is, you will see that it is concatenating both of these strings. So hello, and also the string how are you, where there is a gap in the beginning of a space. And after concatenating, you can get this new string. And I've assigned this to a variable, which is my underscore str underscore 3. So this is how you can concatenate strings. All right, very, very basic operation, which you can do and you can experiment with. Let's understand one more operation, which is if strings have single or double quotations within them already, how do you actually handle them? So I want to create a string which has, let's say, single quotes within it, like a string, I am having ice cream. So I am has an apostrophe within it. How would you actually create a string with this? You can either wrap it within double quotations, right? Because this is a single quotation inside. If you wrap it within a double quotation, Python will understand that this is the starting double quotation and this is the ending double quotation, and whatever is within it, right? Whatever number of single quotes are there within it, consider them all to be part of the same string. If you put a double quotation within that string, which is enclosed by double quotations, Python will get confused, and we will just shortly see how. So first thing is to wrap it within a different kind of a quotation. The second way is to escape it using the backslash operator. And we will see both of these in action just shortly. The first method is basically to enclose it within a different kind of a quotation mark. So if I have a single quotation mark within the string, I am enclosing it within a double quotation mark. So my str4 is I'm having ice cream and this is running, right? And it is able to print that onto the console, right? This is the string that is there. All right, it's not actually printing. Remember, if you print it, the quotation marks will disappear like this. So the print statement and just executing the variable onto the cell is different, right? Remember, we discussed this in the last session. The second method to actually handle this kind of ambiguity is basically have a backslash, the escape operator, wherever you have an apostrophe or single or a double quotation within a string, right? So here what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to enclose the string within a single quotation. And within the string also there is a text which has a single quotation within it. What I'm doing is within the text, I'm escaping it with a backslash. And Python will be able to understand this, right? Okay, so this is the second method that we can use. Now notice that if I don't have the escape operator, right, I'm not keeping an escape operator in this cell, and what I'm doing is I'm just typing I am having ice cream, where I am having a single quotation within it, and I'm also trying to enclose it with a single quotation around it. This will not work. Python doesn't know where to stop. So what it is doing is it is understanding the I letter and the spacebar as the string, and then remaining part it is not understanding at all. It's not able to process because the string has ended according to Python here, right? So this is very important to keep in mind. Now you need a backslash operator or the escape operator, or you need to enclose it within a different set of quotation marks. Now let's take the second example where inside the string we have double quotations and we are trying to enclose it within single quotations. Like, she said, see you later, and her car drove away, right? And you can see that there are double quotations within the string. So what you can do is you can enclose this within single quotations. It will work, right? Or you, if you want to be consistent in your code and you have already started using double quotations, the way to do it is you can use a escape operator and it will still process. All right. And as always, if you don't do anything, it will be an ambiguity. Python, you can see, is colored this part of the string separately because it understands only this part of the string, and then later part it is not understanding. So it's throwing a syntax error, right? The syntax error is invalid syntax starting at this point itself, right? That's where the arrow is. So Python is not able to understand this at all. Okay. So this is about strings which have single quotations or double quotations. Let's now look at f strings. Using an f string, you can insert a variable within a string. Now this is where it gets interesting, right? Let's say I want to create a general string, right? There are these many days in a year, and days is what I want to keep as a variable that I can assign and then reference within the string. If I just create a string like this, there are these many days within a year. It'll just print that and it'll just process that itself, right? As a string itself. There is no other information that is coming in. So if I want to basically try this kind of an output, there are 365 days in a year, and 365 is what I want to assign to another variable, right, called days, that I will then reference within my string. So what I'm essentially doing is I am creating strings which can take multiple values within it, right, from external variables, and reference those and then print the output. So here in this example, the days is an external variable. So I create an f string right here. An f string is nothing but you prefix it with the word, with the letter f, and you just go about it in the usual way. And wherever the variable is, you encapsulate it within these brackets, right? So here the variable name is days. So what I do is I simply call an f string and I say there are these many days in an year, and these many, which is the days variable, is getting referenced from here, right? So if I run this, it will tell me that the f string has processed the variable and the output is there are these many days, 365 days in a year, and this becomes my string output, right? Let's say I make it tmp str as the output, and if you make it like this, if you execute it, you will get that, right? That the tmp underscore str is basically now there are 365 days in a year. So the f string has helped us process this variable, and this is where it becomes very interesting and very useful. Now this is the first way to do it, right? Let's also change this to 366, right? And it will change. And let me make it a random value for you to be sure that this is not some trick. It's actually happening. Okay, there are not 413 days in a year. The method 2, let's come to the second method. What you can do is you can also format the string, right? So there are, I am again using the same brackets, putting a variable name within it. But then after I complete the string, I simply call the dot format method, where I'm assigning the variable name within the string to the actual variable name that's pointing to 413, the integer, right? And if I do this, it will give me there are, let's make this back to 365. there are 365 days in an year, right? So this is the second method. You give a string, within it you have a variable inside it, and that you on that string you call the dot format method, and you assign a variable or a value to that variable. Basically, a value to that variable is what you assign. Here I'm assigning the value days, which basically has the value 365, right? It's pointing to the 365 value. Now, the third method is you don't even need to assign a variable name within the string, right, in order to call the dot format method. If you simply call the empty brackets here, right, and just call dot formats, dot format, Python will know that the first bracket refers to the first argument, right, or the first entry within this dot format function. Now let me also show you that this not only works for one bracket or one variable, right? Let me create one more bracket and give it the value 2024. Now, what do you think will happen? Actually, there are 366 days. So what I'll do is I'll call days plus 1. See what it's doing, right? I've not assigned any variable within the string, within these brackets, but it's still able to understand that the first bracket refers to days plus 1 variable, which is 366, and the second bracket is referring to 2024, right? So this is the third way in which you can format strings with different variable values. All right, let's now come to some simpler operations. You can make a string lowercase by calling the dot lower method. Now remember, the my_string_3 was basically hello, how are you, where the h's were capital. If you call dot lower, it will make it lowercase, but the string itself is not getting changed, right? It's just printing that onto the output, but my_str_3 variable itself has not changed at all. So keep that in mind. The dot lower method is not changing the variable itself, right? And whenever there is such a function which changes the variable or object that it is acting upon, we will call it out. So by default, no function basically changes the variable itself, right? Unless and until I will specify that very explicitly that this is going to change it underneath. Make it uppercase, call the dot upper method. All right. So this is about making strings lowercase and uppercase. Let's see how do we split strings into a list. So if I call my_str_3, this is my string. I want to split it, right? Let's say I want to split it by spaces. So what I do is I simply say my string3 dot split. Dot split is the method, and then within dot split I give it a space bar. So it will basically demarcate the spaces, and it will basically split everything else by those spaces. So hello exclamation is the first string, first element. The second one is how. Third one is r. Fourth one is u, right? What would happen if, let's say, my string was like this? It had a spacebar in the end. One second. Yeah, it has a spacebar in the end. And if I split it, you can see that there is an empty string which has come towards the end, right? Because Python is splitting based on the last spacebar as well, and there is nothing in front of it. So it will give us an empty string here as the last element, right? You can also split it by different symbols. So if I split it by exclamation, for example, right? It will basically take everything before exclamation as one element, everything after exclamation as the second element. And this is how it will give you. It will give you two elements. Okay, so this is about splitting strings into a list. Let's check the length of a string. So my str3 is this string, right? Basically, each letter or space, every character in this string is one, right, of one length. So if you count the number of characters in this, right, that is using the len function, right? So we have to call this function len, and then within these parentheses, we have to mention the variable name, which is the string variable, and this will give us 20. So if you count this, this is actually 20 characters. All right, so this is about checking the length of the string. How do you remove white spaces? There are multiple methods to remove white spaces. The strip method removes all trailing and leading characters in the string. So let's see this with an example, how this particular method works. So my underscore str underscore 6 is a new variable I'm defining like this. I am having ice cream, and there are a lot of space bars in the beginning and in the end, right? So if I initialize this particular variable, it is this variable, right? With a lot of spaces in the beginning and the end. If I call dot strip, it will by default strip all the white spaces, right? If you don't give any argument within strip, it will basically remove all the white spaces. If you do this, it has removed all the white spaces. Okay, right? Let's see one more method, which is the left strip. Left strip will only remove the leading characters in the string, whatever is coming in the beginning. So if I call dot lstrip on this, it will remove the white spaces in the beginning, but not touch the white spaces towards the end, right? It's doing a left strip. Similarly, a right strip, rstrip, will remove all the trailing characters in the string. So by default, it will remove all the white spaces which are trailing in the string, right? So if I call rstrip specifically, if I only want to remove the white spaces towards the right side, towards the end, I can call rstrip and it will remove the white spaces. So this is about very basics about the strip functions: strip, lstrip, rstrip, right? Now it gets more interesting from here. It's also possible to give arguments to the various strip functions. So you might not always want to clean up the white spaces. You might have other characters that you want to clean up. For example, you have this string like this: my underscore str underscore 7 has these asterisks and it has these hyphens in the beginning and the end, right? So if I just call lstrip, for example, directly without giving any sort of an argument within this function or this method, it will not do anything, right? It doesn't understand that it needs to remove these symbols in the beginning. To do this, I need to mention the symbol. So if I call the symbol asterisk and I say lstrip, it will remove both the asterisks in the beginning. So lstrip is saying that, keep removing the character asterisk until you hit some other character. So basically it has removed that in the left hand side, both of them, right? If I also mention both of them, it is irrelevant because it will still give the same output. So this is redundant, right? If you just mention it once, that is more than enough, right? If it is continuous, basically. And okay, what if you want to remove the hyphen symbol now, right? Let's look at the string, and you want to remove the hyphen symbol in the beginning. And what you do is you call my str7.lstrip hyphen. It will not work, right? Why will it not work? Because hyphen is not the leftmost character. The leftmost character is the asterisk. So what Python does is it sees the leftmost character on the leftmost side, and it tries to strip the character that you have provided, which is hyphen. There is nothing to strip there because there is no hyphen in the beginning. There is an asterisk in the beginning, right? So this will not work. Now, lstrip, right? If you want to remove both the asterisk and the hyphen, right? What you can do is you can call the lstrip like this. You can mention that you want to remove the hyphen and you want to remove the asterisk. And the order is not relevant here, right? So that is one thing to keep in mind. Order of the characters entered within lstrip, or even for any other strip method for that matter, does not matter, right? So that doesn't matter, because here what it does is it understands that it needs to remove both of them, right? So it basically removes the asterisk first, and then it also removes the hyphens, right? So the order doesn't really matter. And you can see that both of them have been removed, right? All the initial 4 characters have been removed. And if I do the same thing on the entire string using strip, right, the left hand side and the right hand side, I can simply say that I want to remove the hyphen and the asterisk, and it will remove them from both the sides for me. So you can see that it has been removed. All right, so this is about the strip functions or the methods. Now we have a few other methods. Let's go through them. Indexing. Indexing is used to get hold of a particular item from a list or a string. We will see indexing on lists shortly, but today's indexing is going to be on strings, and indexing starts from 0 in Python, right? Indexing can also be negative if you want to start counting from the end, not from the beginning, right? Okay, let's see an example. So my string is this, right? Hello, how are you? And the last character is a space bar. Now, if I say my string and I give square brackets for indexing, remember you always need to give square brackets, 0:2. What does this syntax mean? This means start at the 0th index and go up till second index, not including second index value. What that means is you go from 0th index, you go to the first index, and you stop there. The second index is just an indication that you don't, you're stopping one index before that. So the end index is not included in while we are indexing in Python, right? In general. For example, in MATLAB, it starts from 1 instead of 0. So the first element is referenced through the index 1. But in Python, the first element always is indexed through 0, right? So here 0 is referring to h, right? If I make this, let's keep this, and let's look at a simple indexing. So this is actually slicing that we are doing, right? Indexing will basically say that you want to find the index value here. So 0 is h. For example, if you say 4, what do you think it will be? This is 0, this is 1, this is 2, this is 3, this is 4. So O is 4, right? That is indexing. And now what we are doing is we are doing slicing. We are saying go from 0, go till 1 and stop there, because 2 is the end index and that doesn't need to be included. That need not be included, right? So this is HE. And right, I could also simply call it as :2, right? If I'm not mentioning a start index, Python automatically understands that start index is 0, right? Okay, I can also do the start. I can give the start index but not give the end index, so it will go until the end of the string, right? So if I'm starting from 2, remember 2 will be counted, which is the letter L, right? 0, 1, 2. So 0 is h, 1 is small e, the second index is L. So it starts from L and goes till the end, right? It takes everything until the end, because I've not mentioned any end index, so it will take everything until the end, right? It will not stop before the end is completed, and that's what it is, right? Okay, if you want to do some more slicing within the string, like 2:4, so it will take the second and the third values, the elements, right? Okay, so this is very straightforward. Now let's think about one more thing, which is the negative indexing. Now, what does negative indexing mean? Negative indexing is saying I want to start from -1. -1, you start from the reverse. So the -1 here is kind of you're standing here, right, at the space bar. And if you say -1:, it will basically give you this space bar as the output, right? Do you see why? So -1 is basically saying 1 before the end is there, right? So just before the last character is finished, you want to basically look at the last character. That is -1, right? If I don't do -1:, if I simply do -1 also, it will work, right? It'll still give me a string, because there is nothing after -1. So even -1:, works. Now I can also slice using negative indexes. Slicing using negative indices. I want to, let's say, only take from starting -4, right, till -2. So it will take -4 and -3 only. It will not take -2. So can you guess what it will be? So let's say -4. So this is -1, this is -2, this is -3, this is -4, right? O is -4, U is -3. And remember, we are going only up till -2. So it will never take the end index. It will not take -2. It will only give me OU, right? Let's run this. So it's giving me OU as the output. So this is about slicing basic strings, right? Let's move forward. Let's look at finding substrings within a string. So the find method searches for the first occurrence of a smaller string, which is called a substring, within a larger string and returns its starting position. If the function is unable to locate the substring, then it simply returns -1. So this is my string, right? Hello, how are you? And I want to find out where does hello start. So hello starts at 0, right? The letter H is starting at 0th index. So it gives me 0 as the value. If I say find how, it will give me the value where, the letter H of how is first observed. And that you can see is the 7th index here, right? So H is 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 7th index is the capital H of how. That's what it is returning, right? And similarly, U, it will return 15 because that's where the U starts. The Y of the U starts. And if a substring doesn't exist, like U exclamation, this substring doesn't exist, right? U is always with a question mark here. So U exclamation doesn't exist, it will return -1, right? This is the find method, which helps us find substrings within a string. Now you can also replace a substring within a string. How do you do that, right? So firstly, let's define this string, or let's look at the string, my string 5. She said, see you later, and her car drove away. Now, if you want to replace one word with another word, right, you can say that, my string 5 dot replace, this is the method, replace she, which is existing in the string, with he, right? And by default, it replaces everything in the string, right? Not few occurrences. If there are 1,000 occurrences of she in the string, it will replace all of them with the string he. Here, there's only one, so it will replace that accordingly. But notice that it doesn't change the underlying variable, right? Because we have also not called it out, so it will not change it, right? Wherever this kind of a behavior happens, I will explicitly call it out. Now let's take another example. The best day of the day that has the best day is of the day that has the best delights, right? The sentence is not perfect, but it serves the purpose. And I'm assigning this to my string 8 variable. Now, what I want to show is you can also define the number of occurrences starting from the left to the right that you want to replace. So here, I'm saying that replace day with evening, but only replace the first occurrence. So my string 8 dot replace day, which is there in the string, with evening, and replace only the first occurrence, only one occurrence. So it will only, let's run this. It will only replace the first instance, right? So day is changed with evening, but the second day is kept as is, right? Now, if I make this 2, you can see that, it has changed both the words, evening, right? Evening is coming 2 times now. So keep that in mind as well. You can mention how many times you want to replace. The occurrences can also be mentioned as the third argument. The first argument is what you want to replace. The second is what you want to insert instead. And the third one is how many times you want to make the swap. By default, it is unlimited. And what I can also do is I can replace, let's say, best with most wonderful, and it basically changes the best to most wonderful, and only makes it one time, right? The first occurrence, not the both the occurrences. So here best remains. Okay, let's look at some less used operations now. So this is my string. My string 3 is hello, how are you? You can do minimum also on the string. So this is kind of an ordering that is there, right? And the minimum alphabet value is returned. You can also return the maximum alphabet value. You can look at how this is done, right? In the documentation, I'll not go through this. But there are these kind of min-max operations that you can also do. And there's a predefined order where the min is defined and the max is defined, right? So whatever characters are occurring in your string, basically Python orders it and basically tries to understand what is the minimum and what is the maximum. There are also string comparison operators, again with that alphabetical order, right? Hello is less than U, which is true because H is less than Y, right? Alphabetically speaking. So this is true. You can also do another string comparison, like hello is double equal to hello, right? So it will give us a Boolean. But notice that the left string doesn't have a space and the right string does have a space. So this will give us a false. It is not a same string. It is a different string. If you want to make it the same string, you need to strip it, right? So I'm stripping the right hand side string, and now it is exactly same, right? So the Boolean returns true. All right, this is a very nice basic introduction to strings. We have covered a lot of different methods, right? And I will be putting this notebook as a PDF in the comments. Make sure you're checking it out, revising it, and if you have any questions, you're pasting it in the chat. All right, let me quickly go over Booleans now. Now, Booleans have only two possible values, true or false, that correspond to numbers 1 and 0 respectively, right? So let's say my bool is equal to true. It's set as true, where t is capital and rue are lowercase, and my bool underscore 2 is set as false. Now, what are the different operations that we can do? Right, mainly four kind of operations. Logical operators are the most common ones. These operators combine Boolean values true or false and return another Boolean value based on the logic applied. For example, if you use AND logical operator, it returns true only if both the operands are true, right? We will shortly see this. So let's actually see this directly. So my bool is true, my bool 2 is false. So if you do my bool and my bool 2, think of this as multiplication, right? It's multiplying 1 with 0. So the answer is 0, right? All right. So the answer is 0 here, which is false, right? If one of them is false and you do an AND operation, the answer will be false because both are not true. So AND fails, and it gives us false here. There is another logical operator which is called OR. Now this operator returns true if at least one operand is true. Think of this as addition, right? If at least one of them is true, right, and you're adding them all up, the value, if it is greater than equal to 1, it will return true, right? So if you have 10 falses which equate to 10 zeros, you have one true which equates to one value. And if you're doing true or false or false or false or false for 10 times, right, it's entire big operation you have, the answer will still be true. Why? Because you have one true in it. So think of it as addition. You're adding 1 plus 0 plus 0 plus 0, which is occurring 10 times, right? So overall, you will get the value 1, and it will be true. Basically, it is representing true. So that's what the operation OR is. If at least one operand is true, it returns true, right? Now, there is a NOT operation also. This operator reverses the value of a single operand unless you're denoting a bracket. True becomes false and vice versa. So not my bool 2, this is how we read this particular operation. Not my bool 2 or my bool, right? So this is basically same as, let me show you. This is same as this basically. It's applying on the first. It's not applying like this. This is not right. This is not what's happening, right? In not my bool 2 or my bool operation. This is not what's happening. This is completely different, right? And we'll say this is what's happening. So this operation will give us true. Why? Because my bool 2 was false, so not of false is true. True or true is obviously true. Here again, you will see true. And what do you do here? Not brackets my bool 2 or my bool. Here, the inside operation is true, so it will return false, right? So you can see that this is not equivalent to this. The 87th cell and the 89th cell are different, but the 87th cell and the 88th cell are equivalent to each other. So very subtle difference, but keep that in mind. Now let's look at comparison operators. When used with other data types, comparison operators evaluate to Booleans based on the comparison result. For example, 5 greater than 2 evaluates to true. So you have the greater than operator, you have the less than operator, you have the greater than equal to, less than equal to, you have the equal to operator, and you have the is not equal to. And notice is not equal to is a bit unique, right? That we generally don't use in mathematics. Particularly it's used in Python, where you have an exclamation mark in the beginning and then you have a equal to sign. So this basically equates to not equal to. 10 greater than 2, obviously, that's true. Type of 10 greater than 2, that's a Boolean, that's what we're getting. 10 not equal to 2, that's again true. my bool 3 is equal to 1 double equal to 1. Now 1 double equal to 1 is basically a operation. It's a statement, and that statement is true. So 1 double equal to 1, right? This statement is true. So my bool has the value of true. And that's what it is basically storing. It's not storing 1 double equal to 1. It is storing, because this is a statement, it is evaluating the statement, and that statement's output is true, the Boolean true, and that's what it's getting stored. All right. So this is basic about the comparison operators. Now let's look at Booleans as numbers. Remember we talked about that true is 1 and false is 0. Now my bool is true, my bool 2 is false. If you do this, it becomes 1. If you do 2 into my bool plus this, it becomes 2, because my bool is 1 and my bool 2 is 0. So right, this holds. And if you do 2 multiplied by my bool 2, it becomes 0, because my bool 2 is 0, right? So 2 multiplied by 0 is 0. Booleans can also be thought of as numbers. And we can convert different kind of values to, or variables to Booleans. So Python can convert certain values to Booleans using the built-in bool function. Empty strings, the number 0 and none, right? This is a very special object in Python, the none object. They all evaluate to false, which basically means that there is no value within it. That's what Python is actually doing. It's saying that empty strings, the number 0 and none, there's no value. So, if you take a bool of it, it is false, while all other values are considered true, right? That's a rough understanding that you can take away. So bool of 0 is false, bool of 1 is true. Now remember, this is what we were seeing in the last session where we were talking about Booleans, right? So it's very well covered here. Bool of none is false. Why is bool of 1 true? Because everything except then the number 0, empty strings, and the none object, everything else is true, right? If you convert it. Now, what is this none, right? If you do a type of none, it is a none type. It's a different kind of a type out there. So very, very important to keep this in mind, that this is a different type altogether. You try to do none plus 1, you will not be able to do this, right? It doesn't support it. So none is a different object altogether. Right? Okay. Bool of empty string is false, right? Okay. And then finally, we can use Boolean values for conditional statements. Boolean values are essential for controlling program flow with conditional statements like if, else if, and else. These statements execute code blocks based on whether a condition, often a Boolean expression, is true or false. So basically what we do is, if a statement is true, execute it, otherwise do something else, right? We will come to these conditional statements, but the idea is that Boolean expressions are very, very useful in defining these kind of conditions where we evaluate whether a condition holds true or it doesn't hold. That is, means it's false, right? And based on that, we execute the additional code. So we'll come into these in more detail about conditional statements in the next few sessions. So we have covered Booleans as well now. And just to go over what all we have covered logical operators, comparison operators, Booleans as numbers, and converting to Boolean. Now what we will do is we will have a short quiz on basic data type operations. And let's have a quick recap of yesterday's session, or the last video in this playlist, and today's session. The first question, right, gear up. So the first question is on integers. Will 200 double backslash 49 and 200 modulo 49 return the same value? I'll give you a few seconds to think about this, and then I will have the answer and explain why is the answer that way. So just think about this. Don't implement and see it. Think about what the answer should be. Okay, so if you have not yet completely thought about it, make sure you're pausing the video, thinking about it, and then resuming. So the first operator, right, which is the double slash, is the floor division operator. Remember, it returns the quotient. The quotient is 4, right? Because 49 into 4 is 196, so the quotient is 4. And this is the modulo operator. which basically returns the remainder. So after 196, between 200, there are 4 is remaining, right? And that's what it will give us, right? So this is the remainder, and this is the floor division. So this value is exactly the same, right? And that's what you could have thought when if you knew these operators perfectly, right? And if you had this in mind. All right, so this is the right answer, is that they will return the same value. Okay, let's come to the second question. On floating point numbers, what will float brackets, string brackets int of 2 return exactly, right? I want the exact value. So here I'm talking about converting one data type from another data type and doing that multiple times. Again, pause the video, think about it, and then resume. So what this will do is it will first create int of 2. Obviously that is 2 itself, because 2 itself is an int. So that is redundant. Then it will create a string of the integer 2, right? So it will enclose the string. Basically it will create double quotations or single quotations around it, right? Just a string representation. And then we are creating a float of 2, right? Because it's possible to convert an integer into a float, so it will work, right? Even if it is a string which is having the letter 2 or the number 2, if you convert it into a float, it will convert, but it will always have a 0.0 in front of it because it's a float, right? So this is what's happening. It is giving us 2.0. Now let me give you another example. Will this work or not is what I want you to answer. Float of 2.1, or let's make this float of 2.1 like this, right? And then I'm converting it back to a string and then converting into an int. Will it work? So float of 2.1 will give us 2.1, which is a floating point number. We convert it back to a string, right? We'll convert it back to a string. So, okay, let's start again. This is a string. We convert it into a float, which is 2.1. We convert it back to a string. And then we try to convert it to an integer. But you can't convert a floating point to an integer, so it will give us a error, invalid literal for int. And this is again something which we saw yesterday. So this will not work. This will not work. All right. Question 3 is on strings. What will my string dot strip hyphen spacebar return? And this is something we discussed today itself. Right? Again, take a few seconds to think about this, but let me move forward. You can pause the video and think about it. So what this does is it removes, remember, strip removes from both the left hand side and the right hand side. And we are mentioning two characters, hyphen and spacebar. So wherever hyphen and spacebar are occurring, either one, in whatever order they are occurring, it will continuously remove them, right, from both the sides. So I can see that on the left hand side, there is just a spacebar and there's no hyphen before we hit the letter I. On the right hand side, there is a spacebar, then there are two hyphens, and then there is again a spacebar. So it will remove all of this from the right hand side basically. And you will get this output, right, as expected. All right. Now the question 4 is assign the output of question 3 to a new variable, then replace the class with the class substring with weather. All right. So I will create my string 1 and I will assign it this value, right? And let's see what is my string 1. So my string 1 is this, right? I've assigned this, then replace the class substring with weather. So my string 1 dot replace class with weather, right? So what have I done? I have done two operations now. I have first removed this hyphen and spacebar from, using the strip function here and assigned it to a new variable. And then I've replaced class with weather. So I've performed two operations here. And here is where you're getting familiar with Python, right? What's happening? And last question. What is the value of this big operation? And this is a tricky question, right? Let's understand this. If you're able to solve this directly, that means you are very, very strong you're already very strong in coding. If you're requiring some guidance, that means you're almost getting there, right? All right, so I'm saying, so make a note of the brackets. 19 minus 1 double equal to 18, right? This is true. All right. 19 plus 1 double equal to 18, this is false, right? So what I'm doing here is in this first expression, right? In this first expression, I have true and not false. So true and not false is true. This is the first part of the statement. First part of the statement. Similarly, the second part of the statement, let's decode it. It is not 19 minus 1 double equal to 18, which is not of true, is false. Or 19 plus 1 double equal to 18 is again false. So false or false is basically the second statement, which is again false. So this is of the entire statement, this is the second part, right? And finally, what I'm doing is I'm having an AND operator in between these two statements, right? So what it is doing is true and false is false. So if I run this, it will give me false. True and false is false. All right. If this is a bit confusing, take a few seconds, go through this and understand how it is working. So this is all that I had for today. It was a long session. We covered a lot of material, basically on strings and Booleans, and we also had a quick recap through a short quiz on the 4 basic data types that we have covered in the last 2 sessions. Stay tuned. We will start with data structures next, and we will start with lists and tuples in the next session. If you have any questions, as always, feel free to put them in the chat. The PDF will also be pasted in the comments. Make sure you're going there, understanding it line by line. And if you have any questions, feel free to ping me and I will get back to you as soon as possible. Stay tuned. See you tomorrow.